So we start from a very simple HTML file, and then we are going to create an input type. This is already part of my previous discussion to start for us to create a validation. This will be quick. Form validation is very important because it controls what will be inserted or saved or will be sent to the server. At the same time, this will control all the things that will come into or sent into your database. It is also a must to arrange your codes as much as possible. So for this one, I'm going to create a div, a container for us to contain all these codes inside the folder. Now, the easiest way for us to create a form validation is to use the attribute required. So this is the easiest way on how to create a validation aside from using a JavaScript. So this part I leave the first name to be blank, but then again, the required attribute will stop the process because it is requiring us to input something. Now, if we are going to revert the situation wherein we're going to insert something on the first name and the last name will be blank, it will be submitted to the server. It's because we don't put required on the last name or the input last name. So it is a must for us to create a required, or we have to include a required attribute for each input type. Now I'm going to create an input password to situate how it works with regards to this required attribute. So if you notice, all types of input types can be inserted with a required attribute. So we can insert a required attribute on the password and at the same time required attribute on your emails and so on and so forth. Another form validation is on the minimum length and the maximum length that will be inserted or saved in a text box or an input type. So we can set the minimum length to 4 and the maximum length to 15. For this example, it will set, or it will tell you that you have to insert at least a minimum length of 4 or a maximum length of 15. Now if you try this one and input at least one character each, what will happen here is that it will remind you that you need to follow a certain rule, which is of course provided on the form validation. So for this one, we are allowed, or we should be allowed to input at least a minimum length of 2, and the other one is of course a minimum length of 4. Another example is for us to create an email input wherein this email input or input type creates or has its own validation, wherein it does not allow anyone to insert at least a very simple email address, but rather to have a correct format. However, this still lacks some form validations. That's why it is important also to back it up with a required attribute, and at the same time we can copy some codes on the Mozilla developer. So that is of course the thing that you need to understand, is that there are a lot of codes also that you can use to validate the form. Just visit the Mozilla developer, which is of course included also in this tutorial. For the form validation of this email address, it must contain at least a proper format of it. However, if you're going to rely only on the form validation given by this email input type, it will be not complete, or it will lack of information that will be inserted, because you may insert a gibberish email address, meaning people will still give you a wrong email address or sometimes a wrong spelling email address. You might want to visit this one, developer.mozilla.org, wherein you can find this HTML attribute pattern, and then you can just copy some of the form validations here. For this example, you can just copy this one or the ones here below. So we can just copy this one all and then going to save it to the code editor that we have right now. I will be discussing more about this one, and then I'm going to copy this one for now, but as we go along I will be discussing it all. So this is the code that we have copied and pasted. It says here that you must have only at least a lowercase and 48 characters in length. So if we go beyond it, it won't be submitted because it is reminding us that we are not following the rules on this input type. So that's it for now. Hopefully you learned something in this tutorial.